I felt empty because I was using science to explain certain things that only feelings and talking about could explain. I started my podcast because every time I listened to someone else's podcast, I had to pause every 30 seconds to 60 seconds because my mind went on a tangent for about 5 minutes. And I went back to the podcast, listened to a minute more, and my mind went on tangents again, which made me realize I guess I have things to say. Let's just get them out of the way, right? But then for a long time, advice culture online, especially on YouTube and Instagram, made me think that I had to know exactly what I was talking about. All these people whose podcasts I've admired, and I did find some good advice there, they started their own personal brand or something bigger than their podcast, but something of their own, which made me think that my podcast had to be official and like perfect sounding and like really corporate like for me to be serious or for me to start something of my own bigger than it one day down the line. So, this advice culture made me basically rebrand my podcast as official. And weirdly, I'm scared of official things. If I have to talk in front of 10 to 15 people or even like 20, 30 people about just something that I did, and it's like this casual conversation where I have to talk about my work unofficially, then I'll do it, no problem. I'll even sound smart. If it gets rebranded, the same discussion as oh, you have to give a presentation about the output and like it's all official and everything, then I get scared. For me to sound official on my podcast for a while there, I thought I had to have complete thoughts because everyone out there on the curated internet like Instagram and even YouTube and a lot of other like sometimes even Pinterest and all, kind of knew what they were talking about, or at least sounded like they knew what they were talking about. And I sometimes do, but a lot of the times I don't because I'm talking and writing about life. And I'm just like living life as it happens to me and writing about it. I can't exactly talk about it like I've lived 2 to 3 lifetimes already. But in this whirlwind of, oh, I need to know, oh my God, I started doing something I'm not very proud of. I started doing some research with the help of AI. Generative AI and Claude in particular, because Chatty had those weird rules in place. I can Google something as well, but Google usually prompts you to go into 10 different articles and then that's like 50 tabs open in your browser. And it reminded me of my days in university where I used to do that and my computer would slow down. I didn't want to do that. So I was like, if I can know something in 50 to 100 words, it's great, right? Let's do it. And so I did it. And for a while, what happened was my thoughts kind of started sounding complete. I swore that I would never use generative AI for writing, and I don't because I don't need to. There is way too much trash going on in my head that I don't need to. But is that trash making sense at some point in time? Is that going to sound really smart all the time? No. And I thought I had to. So, the more I use generative AI for research, such as anthropological research or like neurological research, things I had no way of knowing, it felt like things were making sense. For example, if I want to know why we are so critical of ourselves in the morning, for example, or why some of my thoughts flow 10 hours after I've had my coffee and uninhibited, I don't think I'm stupid. Why does that happen? Then Chatty can give me a reason in neurological terms. And with that scientific explanation, it feels like, huh, I got an answer. And I did that for a few topics I had lying around. The problem with that, well, there's 2 to 3 problems with that. I'm not sure, but let's talk and let's flesh it out. First is if you're just a gal experiencing life and trying to just talk about things that happen to you and trying to make meaning of things, a lot of it is rooted in feelings. You can have scientific explanations for it, the way you could ask Google or read some research papers. But for at least a month or 2 months there, I was having a lot of scientific explanations for things and questions that were rather philosophical. Like, why do humans do this in 2026 is not something any philosopher could have accounted for back in the day. This is something for us to find out through talking to each other and through writing and through consuming media written by other humans who are also just existing and talking about life. So, a scientific explanation makes it feel like you have an explanation, but what I want to do in my life, and particularly on this podcast, is to explain it with feelings. To write a lot of gibberish or say a lot of gibberish until I say one sentence that kind of undoes, if you will, all of the stupid things that I just said. To stumble upon maybe one line that kind of feels like a realization you had mid walk or mid shower. That's what this is about. And while scientific evidence and scientific research about the brain, for example, can help you with that, it if you only rely on that the way I did for the last 2 months, it might feel empty. I didn't realize why I was feeling empty until this morning before coffee. And because I felt empty because I was using science to explain certain things that only feelings and talking about could explain. Like a conversation with a friend is no match for reading a scientific journal about something that you were confused about. Both serve a different purpose, and I was trying to view it with a narrower lens and expect science to do the work of what feelings and conversations with friends can do. The second thing is the concept of open loop. Existing is miserable, isn't it? Especially for millennials and Gen Z, just to exist, you have to do a lot. So, if it's so hard to just be in this world, then who doesn't want to close one or two open loops every once in a while, right? And we all have open loops. We all have these thoughts persisting about, I don't know, the meaning of life or just some philosophical questions like, why do humans do this? Or why do humans from a particular country do this in a particular situation? And so I asked some of these questions, laboring under the misapprehension of anthropological research, to Claude, like, what do humans do this? And it gave me the answers. For a while there, those answers seemed pretty sharp. I was like, wow, I guess I know now. And so this open loop of at least the one thing that was troubling me seemed to be closed. It's fine, right? You closed an open loop in an otherwise hard or weird life. So, what is the problem if you did at least just the one thing the easy way? What is so criminal about it? Huh? But what I realized over the past month is that it's so tempting and it is such a slippery slope. Usually, realizations and epiphanies are good to have if they just happen mid walk or in the middle of a gym or while you're resting between two barbell squat sets. Those realizations are the best. If you or because I wanted to sort of cut in line with my own thoughts and get the answer quicker, and I termed it as research, that open loop closed quicker. The one time is fine. It was so tempting because I had all these questions since I was a kid, like, why do humans do this? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? And then I started asking a lot of these questions to Claudie. And Claudie is like, never gets tired, keeps answering, and does what you want for at least 50 back and forth text messages until the context starts to rot and it starts to hallucinate, right? So, the more open loops that are closed in your brain, the brain kind of goes into overdrive and does this thing where it, I feel like, always has to have a few open loops so that it feels like, okay, I have stuff to do. So, the more open loops I closed without really working too hard for it, the more it opened, and soon enough, I was getting like 5 to 10 ideas a day. You can get 5 to 10 ideas a day if you're in flow state, that's fine. But this was different because I had existed kind of in a semi chill way for all my life until I started using AI, and now I feel like I'm completing a lot of thoughts very quickly and generating a lot of thoughts. But soon enough, it caught up to me. I had to sleep like 10 hours a day or even 12 hours a day a few times when I had kind of seemingly written or thought about things non-stop. This is really damaging because your brain isn't supposed to be closing open loops that fast. It's not supposed to be that easy. I have said this before in one of my other episodes, and I'll say it again. The example of crystallizing sugar. With crystallizing sugar, you have to kind of melt it first, but it doesn't immediately crystallize. You have to kind of let it simmer for or cook it for 15 minutes or so until one moment it will just crystallize. That's just the process, like the chemical process. You have to let it cook for a while. And thoughts are like that. You have to let them cook for a while, which is also considered as being stupid or feeling stupid, until one day you maybe reach a sentence or a thought that is entirely relevant to your context of life. And everyone has different contexts of life, so we all, if we were ruminating in the same thought for a month, could come up with a different conclusion to it, rooted in some fundamental truths, but they kind of sound slightly different, which is applicable particularly to our life. So with AI, you generalize that, and I realize that with all these open loops kind of closed, a lot of my thoughts kind of sounding complete. This morning, I realized, huh? Hang on. Are thoughts even supposed to be complete? Like, under the false guise of, oh my god, I need to sound smart and official, I made my thoughts sound complete with AI research. But actually, AI always knows from whatever it's trained on or pretends to know. I don't know what the hell I'm doing half the times. So, if there is any way I can be me online, I have to just be okay with not knowing. I don't know what I'm doing half the times. I kind of do it anyway. That's a different thing. That's a different story. And that's a different episode altogether. But AI knows. We don't. And I think that's the point. So, after a month and a half of feeling like I was working more, that I was getting more thoughts complete and out there and done, I realized that we aren't actually supposed to do that. And that feeling stupid is a non negotiable requirement of it. And there are the right platforms where people revel in being stupid. Like Instagram is not one, but Threads and Substack, for example, everyone is just unhinged all the time about how nobody knows what they're doing, and we're just like all idiots and weird, right? And those platforms kind of, I was on them, and then I realized, hang on, why am I not applying what I read on these platforms to my own life? Like, what is this weird gap? And by the way, a few days ago, I was feeling so incredibly stupid. It was, as it now turns out in hindsight, was probably PMSing. But it was also that 2 seconds before the crystallization occurred, which occurred this morning. And I made this entire video about how I feel stupid all the time, and it's true. But right now, I feel kind of slightly better, even though I still feel stupid. And what today was about, where my sugary thoughts crystallized, is that feeling stupid is a non-negotiable requirement of writing slash podcasting. If you want to be true to your, oh my god, he has bad breath. If you want to be true to yourself, of you're just a person living your life, because you can't possibly know the answers even if you lived 2 lifetimes, I believe, because life is complicated and the context changes fast. So I feel good that there is no need for me to research every single thing and to support it officially with like 10 research papers and read 3 books for my episode to sound like, oh my god, yes, I will listen to. No, you don't have to listen to me. In fact, nobody is listening to me except my little puppy, and I will in the future if I feel lost. I also tend to forget what I realized every few months. I have this great forgetting, as someone on Threads said. And I'm like, for me to maybe not have that great forgetting and derail all the progress I made, recording is a good way to come back to it. Like, you have proof of, huh, I guess I was smart in April 2026 and I'm now dumb in August 2026, but then I'll be smarter again in October. And so the cycle continues. Now, I will end this because one of the reasons I had my little baby puppy in my lap is because he has to learn to be quiet and exist and be bored with me. The first time I did, he was not okay with just existing, but now he has gotten a lot better. And this is like our little training session where His presence prompts me to complete my thought in 10 to 15 minutes rather than ramble on for 40, like, and go off on a lot of tangents. So I wanted to write by him and only keep the session for 10 to 15 minutes. So this is what we are doing. He looks at me like he is involved in something that I'm doing. I think he thinks that this is official. I guess that's enough for me. And he is doing very well with being bored. Tomorrow also, I'm gonna take us on his first trip, if I can say that. It's a trial and error, but I want to take him where I go, if it's a lake or a hike or something, not on like a full hike for his joints, but I wanna have him explore with me because he's my partner in crime and he's my partner in work and he looks at me like I matter, and that's it's a good feeling for when I feel really stupid about writing about nothing. So I'm gonna leave you with these thoughts and I'm gonna exist with my little puppy, give him a puppy chew, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and yeah, bye from Notes from a Desi Girl because I didn't do the intro this time, but we'll get more consistent with it. Bye from me and bye from Cuckoo. Bye.